We are continuing to follow that breaking news, a potential guilty plea and possible plea deal involving the president's son. Hunter Biden now expected to plead guilty in his tax evasion case after he had initially planned to plead not guilty. I'd like to welcome in attorney and legal analyst Dina Dahl for more on this sudden change. Dina, thank you so much for your time today. This certainly came as a surprise. Is it possible, though, that this was the plan all along by Hunter Biden and his defense team? And what are the advantages of avoiding a trial?
I don't know if it was necessarily their plan, but it is fairly common if anybody's going to have a settlement in a civil case or a plea deal or change it to do it on the eve of trial. They were about to start jury selection today. They had lost quite a bit of the pretrial motion, some specifically about what the defense wanted to introduce around his addiction. They wanted an addiction expert. And that is because that was their defense, that he didn't willfully avoid paying the taxes, but the defense was the addiction. And having lost a lot of those motions, that made their defense more limited. And they knew that. And that is probably why the advantage that you asked, the advantage to entering the plea is not having to go through a trial, not having to kind of have all these witnesses talk about his addiction. We saw a preview of that, of what happened with his gun trial. This was going to be a much lengthier trial, and because it was around the money, how he spent the money, and his defense being the addiction, it was going to be a difficult trial for him and his family, even if he were acquitted.
So what likely happens now? And will his federal gun conviction in any way influence what happens as far as sentencing in this case?
It is true that if you are a first-time offender, you're less likely to get the more severe punishment. These two trials having come so close together, he hasn't yet been sentenced in the gun one, but he has been convicted. So that might be taken into consideration in terms of the sentencing with this. But these have to do with the same time frame, both the gun and the tax. This has to do with those same period of years. I think then his prior conviction that just happened in June may not kind of give a more lengthy sentence than it normally would if somebody were to have had been a repeat offender, let's say, over the course of years. Both of these charges really stem from the same period of time in his life.
So between both cases, is it possible the president's son will actually spend some time in prison?
I think it is very possible he will now have entered this plea, whether or not there is any kind of deal that the prosecutor is willing to put forward in terms of no jail time and not have it be up to the judge. We'll see. We don't really have the details yet if there was any kind of agreement at all. But with his gun charge, because he was a first-time offender, the idea of him being in jail was less likely. But now with this tax, we may very well see him in some sort of prison time.
And just really quickly, we know that, when we talked to correspondent Nancy Liu out there live in Los Angeles, they were going on a 2-hour recess. Is it possible details of a potential plea deal are being ironed out right now?
I think that's probably exactly what's happening. That's why they had the recess. They're trying to see if, at this point, Hunter Biden has a lot less leverage. He's willing to enter into the plea without any agreement from the prosecutors. We saw that there was prior plea discussions that fell apart because they couldn't come to it. So when you are doing it this much before trial and you're making it clear that you're doing it without agreement on the table, I don't think they're going to get much from the prosecution, but it is to their advantage also. The prosecution also avoids a month trial. They avoid the fact that the jury is a big X factor. Okay. You never know for sure what a jury will do. So they will probably give something, but just not maybe as much as Hunter Biden would have liked.
All right, we will certainly see what happens. Attorney and legal analyst Dina Dahl, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.